everyone, and many thanks for inviting me to your learning session today. I'm very interested in this topic of the rights of child human rights defenders, and happy as well to share the experience that we made so far in the piloting of the guide that Ilaria just presented. At the same time, I moved recently, as some of you know, to Cambodia, so I'm very keen to learn from you about the situation of child human rights defenders in the region here. Okay, so in my presentation, I'd like first to give you a little overview, a little background on how this idea developed and how we decided actually to pilot the guide that Ilaria presented in Moldova, and then a bit map a bit what we are doing with adult-led organizations, that is with primary with civil society organizations, but also with ombuds on children's rights in Moldova. And then I'm going to move and explain in a little bit more detail what do we do with child and young human rights defenders together. So this first slide, I actually, together with my colleagues from Child Rights Information Center, we put all activities that actually provide basis for the piloting that we have started doing, last year. And I won't go into all these activities. As Ilaria said, I'm going to share the slides and you can explore all the links for yourselves afterwards. I just want to point to two key developments that are most important for our decision to pilot the guide. And one of these is the day of general discussion on the empowerment and protection of child human rights defenders. Exactly as Ilaria explained, my organization is really a good example of an organization that did so much to create opportunities and facilitate opportunities for children to take part in decision-making processes, and also to engage for their rights as well as human rights more broadly. But we haven't used the terminology of child human rights defenders, and we were also not aware of all the instruments, like, for example, Declaration on Human Rights, and so on. It was with the DGT that we have started exploring this, and this is also what we wanted then to continue together with Child Rights Connect using the guide. And approximately at the same time, 2018 towards 19, Fridays for Future movement was a bit growing in Moldova. That is a global movement of children and young people for more environmental justice. And although we knew in my organizations and some of our partners that children are engaged for their rights and human rights, this was not known in the broader society, or it wasn't taken seriously. So Fridays for Future made this activity for human rights by children more visible. And it also raised some questions. Fridays for Future, that is like children's protests on the street during the school hours, were very challenging for many people in Moldova, including the schools. And so children who took part in the protest were exposed to many risks. Those risks are typical. We knew that many children who raise opinions on human rights, especially critical, are exposed to the same risks. But all of a sudden, these risks were more discussed publicly. And so this is why this whole movement actually put pressure, made this decision to take part in the piloting even more urgent. And so now I'm moving to the next slide, please. So where I just want to, a little bit, as I said, map the activities that we are doing together with Child Rights Connect based on the guide that Ilaria just presented. So generally, I would say this whole piloting process made our work a bit more systematic and also moving towards a systemic intervention. And we are working in parallel with child human rights defenders as well as civil society organizations, adult-led, and ombuds. And this is also moving, I said we are working in parallel, but this is also moving towards more closer collaboration between these actors. So what we did at the beginning, we started with capacity building activities similar to this learning session today. Ilarian and Emma, they presented the guide. And then we had a couple of more sessions where we looked at each cluster of rights specifically. And also based on the guide, implementation guide, we, together with this group of NGOs and ombuds and children, we did a situation analysis. We wanted to learn more about the issues, but also positive developments, so that we can decide together how do we want to move forward. I said that we did it in a group of civil society organizations. We are some 10 NGOs. Some are child rights NGOs, some are human rights NGOs, and this was really important for us to work in this, I'm going to say, mixed group and to mutually learn from each other. So, and then quite early in the process, the ombuds on children's rights joined this learning, this capacity building process. And this was really excellent because in parallel, and we did not know about this back in this period of time, the Ombuds on Human Rights was working on a proposal for comprehensive law on human rights defenders. And through this capacity building that we organized together with Child Rights Connect, the Ombuds on Children's Rights learned about the rights of child human rights defenders, and then advocated for a comprehensive law that is inclusive of child human rights defenders. The Ombuds on Children's Rights is suggesting a separate chapter on child human rights defenders as part of this law. But this was a bit longer process. I'm presenting this a bit. It looks like it was like one step after the other. Actually, we did quite some activism in between, and you can see on the PowerPoint there are some joint activities. So, and they developed from the capacity building step by step. So as we did the situation analysis, we realized that we have enough material and that we might put this all together and submit a joint report on the situation of the rights of child human rights defenders in Moldova for the Universal Periodic Review of Moldova. And we did this. Afterwards, we involved child human rights defenders in this process. I'll come to this in a minute. And then from there, other activities developed that we can discuss maybe in the question and answer sessions if there is interest. So can we move to the next slide, please? Right. So I mentioned that capacity building activities involved children and young people. Some of these children and young people understand themselves also as child and young human rights defenders. Some not, although they are quite active for children's rights or human rights more broadly. And like the core of the group that took part in this capacity building was made by the members of children's platform, and they also took part in the DGD process and some other processes. that I included on the first slide. So I just like to give you an idea who are child human rights defenders that we collaborate with and support to advocate for their rights as child human rights defenders. So this children's platform developed as a follow-up to children's reporting on the CRC that took part 2017. With the group of children that actually led this children's reporting, we worked a bit longer. I think we started 2015. And so this group of children, at the end of the process, we did a review and an evaluation. So they suggested that we should find ways to continue and make it actually a continuous process, so that it is not only, I don't know, every 5 years or 10 years when the time comes for the country to report to the Committee on the Rights of the Child, but that we should think of ways together with children to make a permanent mechanism. This is how we call it, for the monitoring and advocacy on children's rights led by children. And then at the same time, they suggested that we should find ways to involve more children, and they suggested that we should look into the digital media. And we, together with them, we conceptualized a website and then a Facebook account, and then after this developed into an Instagram account and YouTube. And it looks like that the social media works much better with children and young people in Moldova. And this group, Platforma Copilor in Romanian, children's platform in English, they're using social media to involve children in the research, in the monitoring that they're doing on their rights, but also to keep them informed about the results of this research and their advocacy, and to involve them more if there are other opportunities. And another key recommendation of the group was to try and make the processes more led by children. And this is to empower children so that they are able to lead the processes. And this is what we are doing since 2017. And it looks like to me and the group of people that I'm working with, my colleagues, but also children and young people, that that every next initiative is more child-led. And for example, I'm giving an example here. This was developed on their initiative. They suggested that we should look into the sexuality education, how is it implemented in Moldovan schools. And so together with them, we planned the whole process, did the research and advocacy. So they were involved actually in all key decisions around this. And so they decided also to continue with this, because it's quite challenging, and they were not as happy with the results. So in addition to sexuality education, they wanted, from 2017, they looked into pupils' council, student councils in the schools, how they function, what are the challenges, how this could be improved, and also in the toilets in the schools, because they were back then, and there are not that many changes now, in a deplorable conditions. They wanted to do something about this. And so these are their initiatives. But in addition to this, as I mentioned, we also informed them about the initiatives that are happening at international level. So for example, they also took part in the DGD process, the general discussion 2018 that Ilaria mentioned. And for example, in the development of the general comment on peaceful assembly by the Human Rights Committee. So because of this work, because there was already awareness in the group related to their rights as child human rights defenders, we then informed them. Maybe we can move to the next slide. We informed them about the Universal Periodic Review, and that we started organizing with this group of civil society organizations that we aim to submit a joint report on the situation of child human rights defenders. And we wanted to see with them if any of them would be interested to join this process. And there were 4 child and young human rights defenders that expressed interest. And so we started then immediately, we were late in the process, we started immediately with them learning more about the UPR. It was also for the first time for my organization to take part in the UPR, Universal Periodic Review. So we started looking into the opportunities for their involvement, looking at ways how they would like to engage. And I'd like to say that the crucial really for their decision and motivation to engage and to remain engaged in this process was that they had the opportunity to meet with their peers from the region, from another country, that already had experience with the UPR. And so, yeah, and this was a girl human rights defender that explained them how this works, what are advantages, what are disadvantages. And so based on this, we supported them to develop a fact sheet that presents briefly main issues that they faced as human rights defenders, and they also formulated recommendations, solutions how this could be dealt with and improved. So this fact sheet was then shared with the countries that reviewed Moldova. This was all happening last year, and so some of the countries wanted to meet with them, so we organized online meetings, and this was working really well. Then they took part also in the pre-session in Geneva that was also actually happening online, and in an in-country online session to present the issues and solutions. So this was a bit, I don't know, I'm going to call it like mixed feelings about this, and this is why I'm especially related to the UPR pre-sessions. It was, I would characterize it as not very like adult-centered process, not very inclusive of child human rights defenders. But and so I'm posing a question for all of us to think, how can we make these processes more inclusive? And I want to inform you that I assume all of you are aware that Child Rights Connect is already working on this, producing child-friendly guides for the UPR, and the UPR info as well is keen to make these processes more inclusive, so they are doing a study exactly on this question. And then Child Rights Connect, as Ilaria mentioned, produced this thematic brief for the UN diplomats. The experience that we made and the suggestion based on the experience that we made in the UPR, so the suggestions that children made were not, or NGOs were not really, were not supported by any of the state. And so with this briefing, we would like to a bit broaden horizons and provide some explanations how supportive state could use the UPR to advance rights of child human rights defenders. And so if we can move to the next slide. So one of the main issues that child human rights defenders in Moldova identified is that there are many stereotypes related to capacities of children, but also many misunderstandings related to what and how children and young people engage for their rights. And so they suggested an online campaign to try a little bit to raise awareness about different ways in which children and young people do this and how they contribute to their environment, to the schools and the society in general with their activism. They also, for the capacity building that I mentioned that we did with children's group, we translated the child-friendly version of the guide, and this was as well promoted as part of this campaign. And there were some 200 teachers that took part, and many other public figures supported their campaign. If we can move to the next slide, I just want to mention that the Special Rapporteur on Human Rights Defenders as well invited child human rights defenders from Moldova to a meeting with her. She found out about the law initiative of the Ombuds, the law on human rights defenders in Moldova, and also about the fact sheet that child human rights defenders from Moldova made for the UPR, and she wanted to learn more about their experiences. So this meeting happened, and this was really very empowering for child human rights defenders from Moldova. We managed also to involve more interested child human rights defenders into this process, and you can see we combined their online and offline meetings and workshops as part of the preparation. The meeting with the Special Rapporteur was online, and yeah, this was really very rewarding that the Special Rapporteur asked for this meeting and met with children. And so a question for us is like, how can we keep this momentum both at the national and international level? And then so we are moving quickly to the last slide. So because I knew that the main theme of the session today is related to digital environment and how can we sustain children's engagement for their rights also in digital environment, I put here a couple of thoughts that I had yesterday while preparing the presentation. And some of these actually reflect what we learned from child human rights defenders that we collaborate with. I just want, on one hand, I just want to point that one thing that we learned that we want to keep like for the future is that working in digital environment helped us really get in touch and keep in touch with international actors, Child Rights Connect, or for example, child human rights defenders and their peers. This is something that we have not experienced before Corona and this whole, I'm going to say, digital turn. And on the downside is something that we learned together is that although we always think that children are quite, that their capacities to learn digital media are quite advanced, this is not the case always. And so we need to, if we want to continue, we need to invest as well and build capacities of children and adults to use the internet in safe, inclusive, and respectful manner. And this is also where young people who have capacities for this also can play an important role in terms of peer education. So this would be from me for the moment. And yeah, thanks so much for the interest, and I'm happy to get back to any of the activities that I mentioned.